Hey folks, welcome to the April post-KubeCon meeting of the Node Bootstrapping Working Group. We have the regulars, Mathieu, Mike, and me, so no need for introduction. We're part of ClusterAPI, which is a CNCF project, part of Kubernetes, and as such, we adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct, be nice to each other. Everyone in this loop is already very nice, so I don't need to say that. Yeah, so giving the mic to Mike, who has a minor update.
Yeah. So at KubeCon, I got a chance to talk with yourself and and also I got a good chance to talk with Fabrizio and Stefan about Cluster API and everything. So what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm trying to build a demonstration that I can show for the Cluster API community of how the ignition code can be moved closer to where it's used by the provider, which is really what the Cluster API maintainers would like to see. Um, and so I'm trying to build a demo where I extract the ignition parts and leave them as like a library in core Cluster API, and then I'm going to use them from the provider aspect. Now that's just for Ignition v2. I started to look into the Ignition v3 stuff, and I'm not there yet. My experience is still too junior, too novice with Ignition to really, or butane really, to make progress there. But what I figure is if I can get the first part of this demo done, and I'll probably do it with I'll probably start with the AWS provider just because I know it very well. Um, if I can get that part done, I think what we'll have in the end is we'll have a very nice place where we can add further ignition in the future. And so what I'm hoping, and this is going to be we won't be able to just change the cluster API code and get all the changes for free. But what we could do is we can look at the providers who want to offer ignition support, and then we could add an ignition variable into those machine templates, the infrastructure templates. And then we'll have a place within the provider when the machine is being created. There'll be a hook there where we'll take the cloud init information and we'll turn it into the ignition information. And if I can get that set up in AWS and kind of show a pattern for it, we could follow the same pattern in other providers, and then we'll have a place to put the transpiler in when it's ready. So we could start by saying, okay, Ignition v2 works, and we can demonstrate how we can pull the ignition specific API fields out of the Bootstrap provider API and move them to the infrastructure API, which is really closer to where they'll be used. And I think once we show that, we'll probably get the support of the core maintainers because we'll be reducing the complexity of the work that's done in the core cluster API and moving this more towards something specialized. So that's the direction I'm investigating right now. I can't I can't necessarily give a prediction on when I'll have that demo done, but that's what I'm looking at the moment.
That's great to hear that. And yeah, feel free to push something on the AWS Cluster API provider as soon as you have even one line of code or just a comment, like so I can maybe help you troubleshooting some ignition or butane specification here. But yeah, great to hear that. And I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, that's what I'll do then. When I probably in another, it'll probably take a couple weeks, but like what I'm going to do is I'll set up a branch on my, I'll set up a branch like a branch in my fork, and then what I'll do is maybe I'll propose it as like a draft to the core, and then we could start discussing it there, and I could show how it'll work and
Yeah,
everything.
perfect, perfect.
Okay. Well, I that's pretty much what I'm gonna be working on then, amongst the other things I'm working on. And yeah, thank you,
All
Tilo,
right.
for taking notes.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
but
no, that's
that,
the least
that's
like
pretty much the only update I have for now.
nice. I wonder if it's worth reaching out to Alice and let me find her colleague Bipin. and just chat them up on how they feel about poking around with the butane to ignition transpiler, because I think we're still looking for help in that regard. And that is definitely like a well isolated and well defined task. Alicia was a little overwhelmed with like the initial work that we confronted her with, and that would be like the opposite, right? Like the outright opposite. So maybe we can gain more traction there. Uh, is it a good idea to trust that to you to talk internally with folks at Red Hat? That would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I'll reach out to LHA and her manager as well because I know her manager too. So I can kind of ask what their kind of work looks like and if they'd be interested in
Yeah,
that. But I agree with you, Tilo. Like it's this should be a really self-contained thing and doesn't require any cluster API knowledge or anything. So
yeah.
if they're willing to look into it, that would be great.
And I mean, um, it is a little odd because, philosophically, those two tools are something entirely different. But I think at the end of the day, it might have some value outside of Cluster API for Fedora CoreOS in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see depending on how it works, yeah, like I could see this being useful for many other people who want to use Ignition but are kind of
Mhm.
locked in infrastructures that assume cloud init or whatever. So yeah, who knows?
And yes, something maybe we can follow for this work is this pull request on the ignition side. We're investigating of removing this transpilation step between butane and ignition. The idea would be to just feed the instance with plain butane configuration without transpiling to JSON. So maybe this is something we could investigate in parallel. Maybe at one point we can merge all of this all together. But yeah, let's keep a look at this. I will share the link in the document.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a great point to make. That's kind of lateral to what we're doing here, but it will fit right in when we're at a point where we can emit butane at the infrastructure provider level, and then basically feed that directly to the instance without the need of cramming ignition into. That would be beautiful because we wouldn't have no ignition dependencies at all. That would
Yeah,
just be the general purpose transpiler library, and that should be super lightweight. So that's good stuff. Nice. Okay. I don't have anything else.
Yeah, me neither. That's about it for my update.
I mean, that's cool. It's continual progress, and you're bringing that to this meeting. It's like well recognized. Thank you.
Yeah, well, like I'm hopeful I can steal some time away to kind of get this thing working. But after talking with folks at KubeCon and then looking at the code, like I'm very confident that we can make this work. And then I have a feeling that the transitive effect of it will be that if we simplify the core of Cluster API, like the maintainers will be really happy. Like Fabrizio and Stefan, I think they're probably like rightfully skeptical at this point, but I think if we can show them how we can make it easier and take some of the toil away, that will probably be appreciated by the core.
Oh yeah, that is definitely a reasonable expectation and idea. I agree. Cool. Well then, we have two to-dos. The first is kind of ongoing, and that's starting with a proof of concept on AWS. Um, right. That's something I wanted to ask. Would it makes I think you picked AWS for a good reason, right? And I maybe want to have like a quick understanding of why, because wouldn't it make sense to go for the OpenStack provider first?
I think OpenStack would be a good way to go, and I was thinking about
Mhm.
that, but from my perspective, I have a much easier time building clusters for AWS and GCP and Azure than the OpenStack infrastructure. Like our OpenStack infrastructure internally is a little bit separated. So it's very easy for me to make AWS clusters and test there. So I was just kind of going with the path of least resistance.
Development iteration speed is a very good reason for that. Makes a lot of sense. Cool. All right. Thanks for.
But if it works on AWS, I'm hoping that the pattern I'll be able to show is something where it's like we'll have a little code blob that happens right before the machine is created, and that blob will call out to a library that will do like most of the transformation for us. So if I can get that in place, it should be easy to add it into OpenStack, and maybe someone who has an easier time testing on OpenStack could try it out then and see if it works or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's I got that from the proof of concept. That was just basically more or less personal interest, and but I mean it makes all sense when you lay it out like that.
I mean, I love OpenStack. I used to work on OpenStack for many years, so like I'm happy to promote OpenStack first. It's more just for me, it's a little more difficult to make OpenStack clusters.
It makes absolute sense. Like I was just kind of curious, that's all. And I mean, yeah, cool. All right. Matthew, anything from your end?
No, I'm fine.
Nice. Then I guess we're good. See you in 2 weeks from now. I'll just add a new upcoming agenda section to the document. And yeah, have fun, folks, and take care.
See you.
Well, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Later. Goodbye.